today's webinar. So I want to take the time to welcome everyone. I know that people are logging on. And so before we get started, just want to allow for a little bit of flex time, a little opportunity for people to join us, for people to log on. I will mention that the webinar is being recorded. It is also streaming live via Facebook. And so we will be able to share it on a later date for those people that are interested, but wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge those folks that are supporting us in the background. I want to acknowledge Vanessa Reyes and Miguel Osuna, who are managing the controls and doing all of the support work to ensure that, we're maximizing the opportunity to reach people. And so I want to acknowledge them for supporting us in that way. And again, I want to thank all of you who are here, who are joining us. If this is your first time joining us on the Sacred Manhood Initiative, your second or third time, I want to appreciate you for showing up. As a way of getting started, I wanted to honor time, give us an opportunity to really get into a discussion. But before doing so, I wanted to offer some words as a way of grounding ourselves. So as we begin, I invite you, as I share these words, to take a breath, to allow yourself to be fully present. And really, this is because oftentimes we're ripping and running, we're moving from one task to the next. And I think that a way of really taking in what's being shared is to allow ourselves an opportunity to be present. So if you're leaving from your last task, from your recent email or pending emails, I invite you to be present with us for this next hour. And so as I offer these words, again, I invite you to take a breath, to allow yourself to be grounded, to be present. And so the way that I offer gratitude is to give thanks for another day of life. Another day of breath, an opportunity to redo, to undo, to better do how I do things, how I see things. And so I invite all of us to listen to what needs to be heard, to say what needs to be said, to share what needs to be shared, and to reflect on those things that maybe we need to do some work on so that we can show up for our loved ones and all our relationships in the best way possible. And so with that, I invite you to be present and here with us. I'm going to take a personal breath to allow myself to be here with all of you. So welcome, relatives. Now we can begin. I want to mention a couple of things that today's webinar is a part of our ongoing Sacred Manhood Initiative. Our initiative focuses on uplifting the positive values, the traditions, our practices, the roles and responsibilities of sacred manhood that are inherited in all of our authentic cultures that support individuals in building, nurturing, and maintaining healthy relationships, being good in our walk in life and how we interact with folks. Today's webinar discussion is focused on honoring fathers. We know that Father's Day is around the corner. It's a few days away, it's this weekend. But our focus here today is really on fatherhood gifts and baggage, or as we say in Spanish, regalos y cargas. And our intention is to honor, and express our gratitude to the fathers and father figures by acknowledging what they poured into us, right? All of those teachings, the blessings that they passed on, and at the same time addressing the wounds that oftentimes, many of us carry from our fathers as a way to be able to offer forgiveness, acknowledgement, but also transformation, right? So in support of this discussion, we have invited a number of panelists who I'm very blessed to be in connection with, to know and to learn from. And I'm going to state their names and I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves in the way that they want to introduce themselves. And they're here to support this discussion. So if I can invite you, Maestro Kevin Fong, to introduce yourself.
Hello, my Kako friends. My name is Kevin Kahakula Akea John Fong. You call me Kevin, bringing you greetings from the land of the Ramaytu Shaloni people, otherwise known as the Mission District, San Francisco, right here at 24th in Hampshire. I am the child of Robert and Mary Fong and the father of Rafael in Santiago, 27 and 23 years old. Very happy to be here.
Thank you, Maestro Kevin. Appreciate you being on. Also like to introduce my relative, Mike Duncan, if I can invite you to introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Mike Duncan. I am a Round Valley tribal member here from Northern California. My tribal heritage is Maidu, Wintun, and Wailaki on my father's side, and my mother is Western Band, Shoshone, Tomok, out of Western Nevada, Elko community. I'm also the executive director of a Native Dads Network based out of Sacramento, California. And really happy to be here and to share again about the importance of fatherhood.
Thank you, brother. Welcome. I'd like to invite Yesenia Sepulveda, if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ozzy. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It's a pleasure. My name is Yesenia Marie Sepulveda, logging in from what's known now as San Jose, and the daughter of Ismael Sepulveda and Sonia Sepulveda, and sister to Jesse Santino Sepulveda, partner to Margarita Herrera Neri, and just really honored to be here today and share, the gifts and the baggage, the balance of our fathers. And yeah, it's just really an honor to be here. So thank you so much. And thank you, Ozzy.
Thank you, Yesenia. I'd like to also introduce Joey Alvarado. If you can introduce yourself, brother.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joey Alvarado. I'm the father of 3 children in their 30s. All right, let me just say that. Grandfather to 4 grandchildren. My grandchildren is Marcus, Zoe, Emma Ray, rest in peace to her, and also to baby Tony, or Tony girl. Wife Pauline, also of going on 36 years. I better get that one right, or just celebrated that. And also my children are Joey Ray, and my daughter's Crystal, and my youngest son is Jonathan. Thank you. Pleasure to meet you all.
Thank you, brother Joey. Also scheduled to be with us is Maestra Deborah Camarillo, who will be joining us shortly. But I want to thank all of you for accepting the invitation, for being here with us. I am enthused. Fatherhood for me was my entry point into my career. And so I'm going to refrain from sharing as much as I want to share, but to give all of you relatives an opportunity to share what we've learned, right? Whether we carry the role of a father figure, but knowing that none of us live in isolation, that we live in connection to others, right? That we're daughters of fathers, that we're sons of fathers. And so I say that to invite us to be able to have an open, free-flowing conversation around what are those things that need to be addressed? What is that medicine that we can share with others that supports them being in good connection, not just with their fathers, but in relationships, with all relationships. And so as a way to begin the discussion, I want to recognize that in fatherhood, just as in any other aspect of life, there's gifts and baggages. The concept of what are those things and blessings that we can take on and we can choose to hold on to that support us and hopefully help to pass on, but also the opposite side, right? That shadow side, the things that we didn't ask to receive, right? The things that oftentimes get in the way. And I invite our panelists to share what are those things that potentially we've observed, seen, or experienced that support transformation, right? So that we can choose to leave the things behind that no longer serve a positive purpose, right? If they're no longer good, if they don't support us and being good in our relationships, let's choose to leave those behind, right? Let's choose to move forward with the things that do support us in a good way. And so, when we talk about gifts and baggage, I want to just offer some context to how I interpret baggage to support this discussion. And many of us carry baggage. Sometimes baggage, as I mentioned, can be passed down to us. It could be by parents, caretakers, even to include society, right? What society says about gender roles, what society says about fatherhood, about how we need to show up, about defining that. And so inadvertently, oftentimes we inherit those things that we didn't ask for, right? That baggage could be a mindset, a mentality, an ideology, a character trait, a way of being, unhealthy values or habits, or sometimes even the simple thing of taking on too much, right? And when we take on too much, then we don't leave room to take on others, right? Or to make ourselves available for others. So it could too also include, unaddressed and unhealed wounds that manifest in such a way that it inhibits, interrupts, gets in the way of our ability to be present, to connect, to be loving, to be caring and nurturing and patient, right? In our relationships and in our roles. And so I'd like to invite our panelists to share with us, what they feel comfortable sharing, what you all feel comfortable sharing. It could be a short story. It could be a lived experience that addresses the wounds or baggage that we carry from our fathers or as fathers ourselves, right? That we need to release, to forgive and transform. And so I leave this floor open for anyone who cares to address that. I'll just say not all at once, relatives, but Joey?
If I could share, yeah, Ozzy, I think, one of the challenges for me, just growing up, no exposure to my father. He overdosed when I was 2 years old. So when I began to do fatherhood work, the one thing that was missing things that I never had. That was a real hard struggle for me when I went to work around fatherhood programs. Just hearing young men describe their father, jefito, my pops, my dad, you know what I mean, mi padre. I mean, hearing those things for some reason like clicked something that made me envy them because because of the reason that I never called another male by any of those terms. Those are terms of nurturing, terms of endearment, terms of acceptance, of love, of creation. You know what I mean? That father that added something to my creation. But I remember I struggled with that, and it was always like something that like, why am I envious of something I never had? Why do I long for that? And like I said, as they continue to do that, it's like I realized that something was missing in my life because I never had that opportunity to call a man by that any of those terms, dad, pop, whatever that term is. And I struggled with it, you know what I mean? Because it just standed out. And I just had to come to a place where I had to accept, my dad, made a choice of heroin, and it kind of interfered with him being my father because it took his life at a very young age when again, and his son was only 2 years old. So, and that I hope that I could make better choices and decisions than that, I didn't find out how he died till I was almost a teenager. My mother told me every story in the book. Your dad, got hit by a train. He fell off a cliff. You know what I mean? Got bit by a poisonous snake. She said so many stories to me that, I was the biggest liar in school, but I didn't know it because my mom just kept telling me, hey, man, hey, I thought you said he fell off a cliff. Hey, I thought you said he got in a plane crash. And then when that part came out, that I just had to, that's when I found that out, that I had to accept my father made choices that costed him his life. And I have to hope that I could make better choices. That's kind of what I came to grips with. But I think it is a topic for a lot of, people that are in my situation, didn't have a male person in their lives, or if they did, it was, a negative male. But, just missing something that I never had was kind of like a mind-blowing thing. And I know there's people that probably have that experience and haven't even identified it, because I wouldn't have. If I didn't do fatherhood work and be around fathers and their sons, I wouldn't have. I would still be clueless. It would still be a mystery to me,
Thank you, Joey, for sharing that. As you were sharing it resonated with me, right? And as I'm reflecting, because I too grew up without my dad, and didn't get to meet my dad till I was already a dad, and I was already 18 years old, and unfortunately lost him 2 years after the alcoholism. But you mentioned something that envious of something I never had, and I think about how that manifested in my life, right? About hating on others that did, right? About being jealous of others that did. That came from a wounded place, right? Of knowing what it feels not to have somebody to lean on. That when you attend school, they show you an image of what family looks like, but it doesn't reflect your family, right? There's missing pieces or added pieces, and you got 3 grandmas or 4 grandmas, and it looks different. But the one thing that I can take away from acknowledging or identifying that wound, as you mentioned, is ensuring that at least for me, my children don't have that sense of feeling of I didn't get. I didn't receive, he didn't show up for me, or he wasn't present. So really appreciate you for sharing that, brother. And invite the rest of our panelists, to offer your responses as well.
It's okay. I can just share a little bit. Thank you, Maestro Joey. I think part of, in thinking about this question, what comes for me is, one, I just want to express pride in having my father go through life with me and continuously going through it together, as challenging as it is. Very grateful for him. And, I as I think about my journey and growing with him, and kind of moving through childhood and into teenagerhood and all of that, it was a very difficult time, you know, for me, because I like to say I identify with the turtle spirit, right? Which is very much, now it comes to life in a very different way, though at the time and growing up, a way for me to cope with some of the things that I know now that my dad really struggled with was the impact of his father, my papa, you know, who did his best to offer what he could, but then the challenging part in not having the ability to disarm themselves of anger or of shame really impacted my father, and that came out through moments of rage, disconnection for myself, and you know, being the little, we, you know, they call me Senny in my family, and being the little Senny that I was the turtle. And so as my dad was trying to figure out how to be a father, and did the best that he could, right, where there's so many gifts that I want to lift up to, and I know that's coming. Though I really tussled with that, you know, how I could love my dad at the same time, not knowing how to navigate the harm, you know, that was being done, and not just, you know, to me, but to those in my immediate family. And so, you know, now I see I still tussle, right, with showing up to spaces and feeling like, man, I don't want to take up too much space, or I don't want to cause attention to myself, right? Being a part of someone's life who is being challenged with that kind of tussling themselves with anger, you know, at least left me in a place with my dad where I'm like, I don't, one day it could be cool, the next day it can't. So having to kind of feel that out made me feel to this day a little more hyper aware of how I show up if I'm able to, but also be very aware of how much I offer according to my safety. And so, you know, I think now, like, part of the baggage, and you know, I'm excited for the moment, you know, that we get to share about how transformation is lived, because you know, I love the work that me and my dad have both put together, and at the same time, you know, recognizing some of those things that still sit with me, you know, and not wanting to create much attention to myself or having self-doubt, you know, that still lived through. And that really comes for me and my response of how our early relationship was unfolding, and how, you know, he struggled doing the best that he could in being a father. And so, so from, you know, and speaking about baggage, you know, that's really what I'm kind of pulling out of my bag, you know, continuously. So, but thank you.
No, thank you, Senia. You know, you mentioned something that's resonating with me also, is having somebody to go through life with me, right? The power in that, and knowing that you can lean on that person, right? Hopefully to show up with unconditional love. But the other aspect of it is that sometimes some of us carry wounds that we're not even aware of, right? And sometimes the people around us are aware of those things, right? They're easy to call them out, to say, you know, when so-and-so comes over, you had that Fuchi face, you got that face that unwelcomes people, or you're short-tempered, or, and very few oftentimes do we sit and reflect of, where does that come from? Where does that core language come from, right? And sometimes it is inadvertently inherited, right? It's those wounds that didn't get addressed generations before, right? That somehow got passed on to our parents, and now they're being passed on to us. And I think that part of the blessing of all of you that are sitting here on this panel is that many of us have done our healing work. And not that we've got it perfect, not that I'm already there, but that I'm more conscious about looking in the mirror and saying, you know, what do I see that's unhealthy, right? Whether it's for me to own, whether it was passed on to me, but I think I have a responsibility, if I choose to want to be better in my relationships, is to address those. So I appreciate what you were sharing, Yesenia. Want to take the opportunity to welcome Maestra Deborah Camarillo. Maestra, if I can invite you, thank you for showing up. Glad to see you. If I can invite you to introduce yourself, and then I'll restate the question as I invite the other panelists to respond. But I want to honor you by allowing you to introduce yourself.
Well, bendiciones, and Boy, I was battling with the Wi-Fi people and the online, all those things that, I don't know how it works. But anyways, I'm just very grateful to be here. And it's such a privilege, to sit here and joined with everyone on this call. Introduce myself. Well, I am the daughter of Esteban Leos Camarillo and Anita Figueroa. And I want to emphasize that Esteban Leos, who is the son of Isabel. And, and in honoring of this call, I just want to say that I am the proud daughter of an imperfect man. A man that it was a process of understanding that helped him really become the man that he wanted to be. And I think all fathers, want to be good fathers. The opportunity to get the tools to become that dream that they have sometimes falls short. And so I am a daughter that carries a lot of her father inside of her. And I think I've gotten the light in the dark. And I've had an opportunity through my life to help him heal a little bit more as I continue to heal. And so, that's what I would like to say, who I am for today.
Thank you, Maestra, and welcome. Appreciate your words. And imperfect man. Oh, wow. The question that I posed to the panelists, and you're free to respond to it, Maestra, and invite Maestro Kevin and my relative Mike, is, what if you can share an experience, a short story that addresses the wounds or the baggage that we carry from our fathers, or for those of us that are fathers and carry that role, that we need to address, identify as a way to release, to forgive, but to offer transformation, right? How is it that we work on ourselves to show up in a better way for those that we're connected to? So want to just give it an opportunity, and sometimes that's society too, right? That's what society expects of us. This is what society says we should be. This is the configuration of a family. This is what a family should look like. And so I know that in conversation with all of you, I got the opportunity to learn a little bit about your story. And if I can, and with your permission, Brother Mike, I know that you and I were talking, and you mentioned something about, what was it? Living in both worlds, right? About, so I don't want to speak for you, but if you're okay, brother, I want to invite you to share that with us.
Yeah, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I think one of the things for me, I just, like a lot of us, my father was absent for when I was younger a lot, and I carried a lot of anger, for being absent, drinking and, doing what he does. But, after examining like that came, just kind of doing like the research or the recovery piece of just kind of understanding his life and how, him losing his father being exactly like what he was. And then I kind of eventually became what he was too, where I was a drinker and like basically abandoned my older children. I have 5 children. And it was kind of like that whole thing is where it's like full cycle. You start to understand like, and what I look at is that, I always like to mention that prior to colonization, our men, our families, our communities were healthy. Our men were strong. And I always like pose the question is like, what would happen to like 1,000 years ago? What would happen to a man that didn't take care of his family? What would happen to a man, 2,000 years ago that didn't provide for his family or, or abuse his wife or abuse his children? There'd be consequences, right? And so today so the instructions are clear and they're still here with us. You know what I mean? But it's about getting back to those instructions that our people, that what we know what they are, but there is something that disrupted that. And we know what that is, right? And so it's about getting back to that. And today, as a father, as running I owe this to the many men that were getting healthy, getting clean and sober, walking a good path, and I've learned to forgive my father because again, I caused the same harm to my children, my older children, that he did to me. And even though my oldest son, sometimes, some days he loves me and sometimes he don't, you know what I mean? Just he has his own daddy issues, you know, and I have to allow him to heal on his own time. I can't fix it. I can't do that for him. He has to do that. That's his own journey. But I'm here. I'm present. And I live. I'm a single father. I've been raising my younger kids on my own. Their mother is absent out of their life, and so I'm over here trying to mend with my older kids, my relationship and with them, and then at the same time, I'm not trying to allow them to have the hate, the resentment for their mother, because of her not being around. And because I understand that this is the bigger picture, is that I want my children not to grow up with that resentment inside their heart or in their spirit, in that way, because I know how hard it is to get rid of a resentment. As a man, just as a human being, I know how hard it is to get rid of a resentment. So why would I teach that to my children? So I always teach them forgiveness, how to learn how to let go through ceremony, through prayer, again, and trust, that be thankful that, in a sense of, creators put you on here on earth, you know what I mean? And so what you do with your life, how you get here, now it's your turn. What are you going to do with your life? And I think that's the power that we started all of talking about. It's like breaking cycles. But I'm not like, and I think that's what helped me understanding kind of like where it was broken at. I understand that it's like generational, that like it wasn't my dad's fault either. He didn't have a fair shake too. And his father probably didn't have a fair shake either. And because of the like colonialism, and it just, all that stuff that we know about, right? And so, but we're here, and what are we going to do with our life now? And that's the most important thing that we have to focus on when we break cycles. And we understand that our parents did their best, even though sometimes it was minimal, but they gave us the most important thing they gave us life. And that's the most important thing. So that's the way that I look at it today. No.
Appreciate that, brother. Thank you. I want to encourage those of you that are participating, listening in, utilize that chat function. If there's something that's resonating with you from what everyone here is sharing, we'd like to hear from you. Want to engage with you in that way. But I also want to invite Maestro Kevin Fong to share. But I do want to beforehand just mention kind of what's resonating with me based on what you shared, Brother Mike, is the living in both worlds, that some of us come from blended families, right? That I know that for me, when I talk about my two older children who are now young adults, and I do the comparison of me now raising two smaller children, I oftentimes reflect on how my two younger ones are getting the best of me, right? They're getting a better version of who I am based on the work that I've done. And I feel like I've shortchanged my two older ones. And in acknowledging that means that I got to do some work, right? That I got to put some time in, that it may require an apology, to say, forgive me if I hurt you. It was never my intention, right? I was doing the best that I could. And I too was shortchanged. And that's not an excuse, but rather an entryway, an opportunity, an open door to continue to nurture that relationship. So appreciate you and for what you shared, brother. But Maestro Kevin, anything you'd like to share?
Hallelujah. Thank you, Ozzy. We're still very blessed to have my dad with us. He's 88 years old, in good health, lives at the Veterans Home up in Napa, and is adjusting to a new life. My mom passed on December 27th, and they were married for 68 years. So he's, we're I would say the medicine and the journey continues, because the relationship between me and my dad has drastically changed in the past, going on 6 months now. But I would have to say, from the beginning, it was a setup. My dad is a child of immigrants, and I am pretty true, a product of the U.S. and American system. And so when I was watching TV, all my imagery around what a dad is like My Three Sons and the Brady Bunch and all of that stuff. And you have the dad that went to work and wore a tie and came home and read the newspaper and was always there. And, you know, my dad, he was a air conditioning technician, and he was on the road for 5 days a week, going up to Reno, going up to Chico, and servicing various folks. He worked for Safeway. So I never saw my dad, you know. And when he came home, he was tending to my older brothers, scouting and woodworking and all kinds of stuff, right? And didn't have much time for me. I was much younger. And so there just wasn't much there, yeah. And not to say that he didn't try, and he tried. And I came with my baggage too, because I was born, you know, I am not your stereotypical boy. I am two-spirited and have always leaned much more toward the feminine than the masculine. So short story, Ozzy, I remember he took me to an Oakland Raiders game, right? Just me and him, father-son bonding. And my dad went and he said, I'm gonna buy you a football. And I'm like, I was maybe 9 or 10 years old. You know, I didn't want the football. I wanted those silver pom-poms that the Raiderettes were using. And so, you know, it's like, I want to be a Raider. I wanted to be a Raiderette. And he had a lot of, you know, we came home with the football, just to put it, long story short, but it took several decades for both him and me to find that place where he came to a place of accepting me for the entirety of who I am, and for me to understand that I am not disappointing him because I can't throw a football. So there's different ways in which I think both of us had to let go of or release of the sense of expectations of what fatherhood is, and what a child of, or especially a boy child of a father is, to a father is, what a son is. And that journey continues, you know, and I'm blessed to make sure to know that that journey is continuing with him at 88 and me just turning 60. And I would have to say then it passes on to my sons. You know, as a gay man, there were no accidents. I went in both eyes open, adopting these two children. I wanted to be a father. And I made that choice, and to raise these two boys. Rafael's from Paraguay, Santiago's from Guatemala, so they don't look like me, and they're not from, you know, their DNA coding is different from mine, and yet you see us walking down the street, it's like, oh yeah, that's your boy. No, there's no doubt, you know, the resemblance is there physically and just spiritually, etc. But this whole notion of what it means for me growing up or becoming a father, and not knowing that I'm not going to teach them how to throw a ball or to whistle or to, you know, hammer a nail. I just don't have that in me. And to find other people to teach them that, if that's what they wanted to do. And so, and that me too, Mike, I, you know, was mostly a single parent, so had to be both mother and father. And I think that's how my kids look at me now. It's like, sometimes they call me mom, sometimes they call me dad. And so I'm kind of wondering what fatherhood or parenthood looks like when you're a little bit further down on the spectrum of the feminine, which I inhabit, and what that means to be raising young men, especially young brown men in this world, and where they have to show up and they have to, you know, protect themselves and stand up and all of that. And so I'm working and living in that tension too. Yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that, Maestro. And what's resonating for me is this this struggle that oftentimes parents have, right? And as fathers, we have this struggle too, of accepting our children in their entirety and for who they are versus who we want them to be. And relatives, I get it. I get it. I get it. There's a part of Ozzy that says, I wish my children would be more like me and that they would be this way. And sometimes those are the wounds. That's the baggage that interrupts, that gets in the way. That sometimes our children can look at us as fathers and say, well, is he really truly accepting of me? Right? Because he doesn't seem to get me. He doesn't seem to understand me. And not that we need to fully understand, but I think that one of the blessings that we can bring to our children is accepting them for who they are, right? And that we recognize that that there's a lot of woundedness in society and sometimes in our families and in communities, that oftentimes it is that simple aspect of not feeling wanted or welcome that jeopardizes, our children's lives, right? That has them contemplating of whether or not they should be here in existence with us. And so I want to thank you, Maestro, for sharing that. I want to be able to move this conversation as a way of, recognizing the things that we need to work on, to bring in healing and transformation. But equally important is acknowledging the blessings, the gifts we receive that brought us feelings of being wanted, welcome, accepted, a part of, included, loved, right? The non-material things, but rather the healthy values, the character traits, the way of being, the abilities, even the prayers, the expression of the heart. And so I want to invite all of us here is, if we can, is to share, if there's a story, an experience that reflects fatherhood transformation, that led us to give some blessings as a way to honor our fathers and also father figures, because I believe that in many of our cultures, fatherhood or father figure it's not tied to genetics or blood, but rather somebody taking ownership of you, right? Extended kinships, showing up for someone else. So I'd like to invite us to see if there's anyone who wants to share.
Yazi, hey, Yazi,
Go ahead, bro.
it's of course a challenge, as we normally grow up and we develop, we crave nurturing, and but the hard part is like, who teaches us, you know what I mean? As I describe my situation, like not the greatest nurturer, you know what I'm saying? Or if I am a nurturer, it was growing up, it was in a violent way. I could nurture a lot in the violence, but that didn't help my kids, you know what I mean? When it came to them learning lessons, and I remember that. I remember it in the 90s, I was teaching a I was teaching a parenting class. And I was saying, yeah, you dads need to change. You need to change, I remember like just talking all that stuff, And then I remember like a voice coming to me like, hey, Joy, are you ready to change? And I'm like, who said that? Who said that? And I remember that as I was at that time, we were walking through the mall, me and my son, he was 12 years old at the time. And he went to get my hand. And when he went to get my hand, I pushed his hand away. I just pushed it away. I was like, what? You're 12 years old, he was, my size, just different things. I was just like, just don't, it just felt very strange because I was never shown that, I was never taught that, I was like you said, the medicine is the teachings, and knowing that wherever we have to learn, because when I realized that I didn't have that ability because my mother raised us, and because my dad was gone, she tried to raise us like little pet bulls. You know what I mean? Me and my brothers raised us like, you're gonna be pet bulls. She like overdid the she went straight to the Godfather. She went to Michael Corleone. You know what I mean? Trying to raise us that way with that mentality. And so what my son craved when he went to hold my hand in the mall at the age of 12, I pushed it away. And I said to myself, well, if somebody's going to teach me how to love or nurture, it ain't going to be a 12-year-old little boy. But that's all there was. My maestro had to be my son, and I had to recognize that. And I remember the next time, Ozzy, that he reached out for my hand, because I know he looked at me like, man, why'd you push my hand away, Pops? I was in his life every single day of his 12 years, And the next time he got my hand, I did this. I go, I think I said like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I pushed it away. Because I one thing I understood is that change is a process. And I know that a lot of men, I'm the poster child, that change is a process, but a lot of times men think that it's automatic. And for me, that wasn't going to be an automatic lesson. And even though it sounded, weird, like, man, you can't even hold your son's hand. What kind of weirdo are you? It's just, it was never taught to me. It was weird. It was strange. It was like, it didn't make sense. Like, this doesn't happen the way my mother raised me, never hugged me, kissed me, nothing. You know what I mean? So that just was non-existent. But I kept, next time it was, you know, just counting down. I think it started with 10, 9, then it was 7, 6, 5, then 4, 3, 2, 1. And the important thing is that I needed to understand that my teacher was my son. There was no one else around to teach me the importance of nurturing, of a young man craving that, a preteen saying, hey, you know, I don't understand your life, Dad, you didn't get it, but I know my life, I crave it. I crave it. And I remember, like I said, when I share this story, you know, with moms, you know, because most of the groups I had were mostly mothers, man, they look at me like they wanted to kill me. You know what I mean? Like, you know, are you a tonto or what? You don't know how to hold your boy's hand? Like, what kind of weird? But it was my upbringing. I wasn't weird. I was ignorant because I wasn't taught it in any manner, in any way. And you know, it just kind of, you know, growing up as a, you know, my mom wanted me to survive. So she wanted a pet bull because, you know what I mean? You know, you want to be the pet bull, you know what I mean? Not the Chihuahua, no offenses to the Chihuahua lovers, all right? But that was, you know, that was me, you know, and my son taught me that lesson. And I think that, you know, the lessons that everybody shared, all the maestros and maestras that they shared, you know, they're all valuable, no matter what they are. Some of them are more intensive care, some of them are more practical, but it all comes down to that nurturing, you know. So, you know, I have grandkids now. I could repeat the same mistake. You know, Ozzy, with my grandchildren. But, you know, my son at 12 years old gave me something to evaluate, something to recognize, and the ability. Now, that doesn't mean I'm the best at this ability of showing love and nurturing, but at least he offered it to me by just reaching out and saying, I want to hold your hand, Dad. You know what I mean? So just wanted to share that if it makes any sense. Another part two, I'm a complicated guy. So if it don't, you're normal, I'm the abnormal one. All right. Thank you.
No, appreciate it, brother. Wow, a lot of beautiful medicine coming through, and want to appreciate everybody for your comments. You know, we are seeing them come through via Facebook and also on the chat. Wow, Joey, what you were sharing reminds me a lot of the work that I still need to continue to do, right? That oftentimes my children will come to me, and I have a more natural way of nurturing and expressing love with my youngest daughter than I do with my youngest son. Right, with my youngest daughter, it just you know, free flowing, loving, caring, affection. But with my son, because I share in that experience about you know, having to be a pit bull just to survive. When my son gets close to me, sometimes it throws me off balance, right? And I have to remind myself that he is worthy of being offered that same amount of love and acceptance, right? And that's my wound, right? But if I continue to do my work to transform that, my hope is that he will have not just a childhood, but an upbringing, a life where he can say, my dad loved me unconditionally. My dad might not have been perfect, right? Ozzy struggles, but he did his best. And in that process of his transformation, he allowed space for me to connect with him. So appreciate that from you, Joey. Relative, someone else that likes to share the response to that question, you're more than welcome to. I see you, Maestra, unmuting yourself.
Yeah. You know, it just reminded me of a story of my pops, right? So, you know, back in the day, you didn't go to the store and buy new things and something broke. You fixed it. So, you know, so they knew how to fix everything, right? And my dad was a mechanic, you know, and he had, you know, in his early days, he struggled with his temper was very explosive. So my brothers are like, Charlie, I don't want to work with them, you go. And I was the one that I didn't fear my father. And I think there was probably something, because I had a lot of rage, I think there was something that we reflected for each other, that, you know, that's why we hung out together. So my brothers would say, no, you go with my dad. They didn't want to go, so I would go with my dad. And so one day we're fixing a car, right? So we had the motor up on an A-frame and just put it all back together. And so we're getting the motor ready to go inside. And you know, when you're putting it in, the transmission has to fit exactly in there, right? And there's little teeth. And they got to go exactly right in there, because if the alignment isn't right, it won't go in. So we're there and he's pushing the motor in and trying to get it in. And we're at it for a little while. And then, he just got to the point where he got so frustrated because it didn't want to fit in that he just blew it, right? So his anger got the best of him. So he got that motor and he shoved the motor, in the car. Now, mind you, it's on a chain, right? Because that's how they put it on the A-frame. We're putting it in. So when he throws the motor out of his anger, the motor's going bam, bam, bam on the inside of the in the inside of where the motor sits in the car, right under the hood. And I wanted to die laughing, right? Because I'm seeing, we just spent a long time to fix this motor, got everything. And now my dad just threw the motor and the motor's just going like this. And I'm like, man, we're going to have to fix this all over again, right? Because those things are heavy. And after, because you can't laugh then, but after we were able to laugh about it and it became a family joke. But I remember that story because and this is something I was able to understand later, is that my father was trying to do something right. I was trying to do it right. And the anger comes in because I do the right thing. And yet I get the consequences from society about who I am as a Mexican man. You're looked down at, you think that they're dumb because their pastimes are, a little bit longer, then you must be stupid. That anger that he carried, because what was reflected in society for a man at his time was not validation. And yet I tried to do everything the best the way that I know how to do. And so I could see why, he carried a lot. He carried a lot of those traumas that, he inherited with my grandfather, trying to have that same struggle, trying to be validated as a good man, doing his best, in the society that he was in. I'm so grateful that, he never gave up. And I want to thank our fathers because, our fathers, as best as they can in their own way, don't give up. Even though, they might repeat some of the same lessons, but just the fact that they're still there as best as they can, trying to make a way for the family, we have to acknowledge that part. And my father didn't give up, and he learned it. I'll tell you, I'm the oldest from my mother, and my sister, who's the youngest, got a totally different father. Because he used his life to try to better himself, to try to understand, to bring healing into his own life, that when he definitely transitioned on, he was a totally different man. And I just, want to offer that too, is that I think sometimes it's easy to judge maybe some of our fathers, because we want to just look at what we think is before us without really not understanding, all that's encompassed of them being there. But I think the other part that we have to recognize is that our fathers are there. They're there the best way that they can, and that they're still hanging in there. I think, that says a lot, and we need to honor that.
Thank you, Maestra. It's heartfelt as a father to remind ourselves to never give up, even if there's disconnection, even if time has lapsed and we failed to reach out. I think that our children, no matter what age, are deserving to know that we're not going to give up, right? And so I appreciate you sharing that, Maestra. I did want to invite Yesenia. I know that in our conversations, you wanted to uplift just, your relationship with your father and the gifts that have bloomed and came through as a result of, you being in good connection with him. So I wanted to offer you an opportunity to share that also.
Yeah, I was feeling like, how could I not respond to that, maestra. I was like, that's my dad too. You know, the thing is going around and he's like, pizza, you know, all going off the wall. Yeah, you can't. I'll laugh in the house. um, yeah, I think you know, I really and it's funny, I was telling, you know, Brother Ozzy at one point, I hardly ever get asked to speak about my dad. Um in my relationship, you know, with my dad, and I was really excited for this, although I was like contending, oh man, like I need to get it together, you know. Um but you know, what really is fun for me now in thinking and reflecting about our relationship is you know, with all the anger and the rage and the wildness. My dad was wild. um he brought us in the wild too, right? My dad, and because I want to share just a snippet of a story, but to kind of give context, my dad was the kind of man who was all that, and was also you know, we didn't buy fruit, like hardly ever. We stole it. You know, we were the kids that because of our dads were made to jump fences that didn't have the top bars, so you get cut on the legs and you get all the oranges. And if you go to the person and they have a whole bunch of fruit, they say no, you know, forget them, we're taking it because there's too much fruit on the tree, right? That's my dad, who hunts, you know, where he shouldn't in the East Bay Hills, who, you know, is full of adventure, you know. And I think especially when I'm outside, that's when I feel my dad, you know, most with me, where I feel adventurous, I feel connected, and that's, to be real, the times in which I feel him the most, himself and at peace, even within the wild, you know, that he was. And you know, and that was hard for me, because it was either or. I knew I was safe if we were out and doing things, because the direction and the energy was going towards something, and I knew that whatever, even though I didn't want to do it, I never want, that's not me, that's not my spirit. We're very, very different in that sense. I knew that that was the only way that I could connect with my dad, was by pushing myself to do whatever I could to put myself out there. You know, I'll steal whatever for you, Dad. Well, whatever we're gonna chow down. But I think one thing that you know, a few years ago, around 2019, or the couple years leading up, my family were helping to take care of his dad, my Papa Ismael, whose birthday is coming up on July 4th, and they were taking shifts, and we were all, you know, kind of contributing, and my dad, you know, signed up to do it. And through that process, I admire him so much now, because I can see the the strength it took to take care of a man that did so much harm. Um, and there were times that my papa would still say things that were like, and my dad would come home, right? Because he's like, I'm not going to say anything to the man, you know, or I'm going to be there, do what I can, and I'm going to come home, and we would hear the effect. And my dad would unload. And, but that allowed him to go back and serve his dad. And I commend my dad so much, because he taught me healing, right? In that sense, is he was a really big teacher for me, then how to be patient with him. And so when he would come home and talk and memories would come up, I'd be like, wow, you know, like I'm understanding, I'm in the process of understanding. And you know, even being on my own healing path, it was in that sense, Creator was like, here it is, you know, here's your introduction, you know, to these wonderful people, and most of you are that for me and have been, and this is what your family path is going to look like. And they were mirroring each other, and so we were able to kind of be in relation together in that sense. And my dad was changing, and so much so that in the very same way we weren't affectionate very much, and the love was more like in playing like baseball or whichever. but there was a period in which my brother left to the military and did work, and he was away for some time, still connected, but away. And my dad had no one to fish with, no one to hunt with, to do all the things that my brother would do, right? I'm like, I'm free from it, thank goodness. Now I took the opportunity starting about 3 years ago to go fishing with my dad, and we're coming up to do that again soon. We're going in the ocean, and there was last year is one of the memories I want to speak of. Um, it took a lot for me even to just put my head on his shoulder. And
Mm.
we rode out last year. We take a boat out of the Richmond, and we're in the Bay Area. We take a boat out underneath the San Francisco Bay Bridge, and we're out in the water for 10 hours. If you're in the ocean for 10 hours, you know what kind of damage that does to you, as far as energy. And we're coming back, and we caught a lot of fish, and we're on our way back. And usually when my dad is tired, he's very frustrated and irritated. Well, my dad was so calm, and and it was such a beautiful feeling to come home at sunset and my dad be calm and not frustrated, right? It was so disarming for me. And I was tired, I was done. And so I went and I slept on my dad's shoulder, and it
Mm.
was the best feeling in the world. um and I'm so happy for these tears, because I get to
Mm.
share them now with him, and so that journey of transformation and the other side of the baggage is just such a blessing. And in
Mm.
that sense, I always say, as much as I love my grandmas and my mom and like all the women in my life, my dad has actually become the biggest teacher for me. And so, with that, thank you for allowing me to share that, and the opportunity to lift him up too. And so,
Mm.
just thank him and all the fathers that are present. And so, appreciate it.
No, thank you, Yesenia, for sharing that. Uh, wow, powerful, powerful. I want to acknowledge all of the affirmations that all of the love that's pouring in through the chat and through Facebook Live. Acknowledging all of what we're sharing and how beautiful it is to have opportunities, right? To be close, to be affectionate, to have healthy, memorable experiences, right? I think that's what I strive to do is how do I create healthy, memorable experiences, for me and my family and my children. I do want to ask us relatives, there is a time check. We have a few more minutes. I want to make sure that we are closing in a good way, but I wanted to invite you, if there's one or two of you that like to share some words of advice, right, in reference to father-child relationships, fatherhoods, based on the lessons learned by your own development and or experience. I'd like to invite at least two of us to share before I make some closing remarks and observations. Go ahead, Brother Mike.
Yeah, so I'll take a few minutes. I just want to share that we start to turn into these thoughts of like hurt people, and to heal people. We change into the mind frame of historical trauma into an intergenerational trauma into intergenerational healing. And one of the things that what I've learned in the time that I've been working with men and working on myself is that I've been taught wrong what a man is. And so one of the things I've been working on, and again, it's been mentioned more than once through the chats, but again, I'm working on both my spirits of like my understanding, like my mother and the power my mom carries and the power that my father carries, and bringing those two things together, and so that I can understand the best of my ability how to be a kind, gentle man to my children, to the ones I love. I always want them to remember, who I am, and I want them to remember me as a good person and the best I could be. And that's always been my mission. Is like, when I speak to them, or when I speak to my children, my family, my loved ones, I want them to remember me as a gentle, strong person that was always there for them. And those are the things that I wasn't taught as growing up, but I have the power, and so will my kids, to have the power to change how men are viewed in my family. And so the vision is very clear in like 7, 10, 12 generations down the way, that these will just be stories of absent fathers, that these will just be stories of abuse and men abandoning their children. These will be stories of men just not present in their lives, because we, as our generation now, have come together and dedicated and committed to the thing of what we call healing. And so I just, like, to me, it's powerful. And that's what my mission and vision is. And I talk to my children all the time about how powerful that is. What my intentions are. I parent with intentions. I parent because I know I parent with love. I parent with forgiveness, and I parent with goodness. And that's the things that I always talk to my kids about. Always take care of yourself and your spirit is so important. And I'm just trying to, because I'm raising a son and a daughter. So, you know, I have to have the strong side, but also have to have the gentle side to also connect with my daughter as well. And because I'm the first man in her life that's going to have to show her how a man should treat her. And that's something I'm very committed to. And I'm thankful to be on this panel today to share just a little bit. Oh.
Appreciate your palabras, brother. Thank you. You know, I like to take this time as we're coming to a close to share a couple of words that I captured from all of you, and with your permission, which I think speaks to honoring fathers and in that process. And so I took some handwritten notes that I want to be able to give voice to share with all of you. And here's what I captured. Missing the things I never had, envious of something I never had. I want you to go through life with me. How transformation lives is an imperfect man. It's through a process of understanding. The instructions are clear. Be present. Accept me in my entirety. We crave nurturing. Change is a process, often in need of intensive care. If it's broke, you fix it and you never give up. That is the mission, vision, and intention, and done with love. That is all of us relatives. That is something that I like to offer all of you that are listening. I want to appreciate all of you, maestros, maestras, panelists, for sharing of your story, of your father's story, or your family story. My hope is that those that are viewing and listening can take something from this that will support them strengthening their relationship with their children. Lastly, I'm going to close off by reading a poem from one of my elders, Isaac Cardenas, Maestro Papa Bear, as a way to honor him and his father. And he had asked me specifically in the request to have him on this panel, and him not being able to be here because of a prior commitment, if I can share this with all of you. And so in closing, I'm going to share this poem, if you allow me to, again, from my elder, Isaac Cardenas. The poem is entitled The Iceberg Veteran, and dedicated to his father. It says, he is sleeping, dreaming in the wake. The old man wonders, is it still night or morning? He sighs, damn, it's morning. He rises only in his drawers, walking through the house as birds chirp and sing the beginning of his day. Heading for his chair and sits in like an ancient king ready to hold court. He has established this place as his reflections point into the house. Able to see the comings and goings of people in his neighborhood from which his porch window, a bird feeder that placed just outside his window so he can view as the birds arrive for their breakfast. Disgusted with the sparrows as they arrive early, like unannounced guests at his door, at last, his royal family arrives. A family of cardinals, males with bright red feathers and orange beaks mirroring the sunrise. The females with earth brown feathers and sunset beaks. The males holding sunflower seeds and feeding their mates. Then his favorite visitor arrives. The old man sits up on his throne for a closer look. The elder of the Cardinals clan sits on a limb inspecting the descendants. This elder with his weathered crown of feathers, faded beak, looking as an old prominent figure, reflecting to his observers his patron as he smiles in pleasure. The old man in his 90s, wanting to understand why he has lived so long and been so lucky. In his long life, surviving a world war, going into harm's way as a young man at 17 in the epic Army Corps, leaving his barrio that still hands horses and mules, traversing the transformation of an era of horse and wagons to motor vehicles. He has always welcomed progress and loving the American foods of hamburgers, hot dogs, rather than his ethnic staples. Yet, seeing the destruction of war, witnessing children starving in the streets, building burning, war-torn villages, and dead horses along the routes as they liberated Italy, France, and Germany. The liberators would travel in silence on their way to their next duty station. On his return home, the callus of the experiences he carried led into his family and social life. Never once talking about what happened to him, always short-tempered with no filter in his comments to family, friends, and complete strangers. Never even the plaintiffs and defendants on Judge Judy had no shield from his anger, impatience, or pompous statements. As he screamed at the television, I heard him ask, Apam, is everything all right? He replies, yes. Give me your palabra, your word, that you will pray to the Virgin of Guadalupe, and that I don't want you to be crying at my wake. As I acknowledged his request, I said, yes, sir. Yes, Apam. I don't think that would be a problem. Good, that is my wish. I was able to keep my palabra to him for almost 2 years until his birthday. I played his favorite songs on my guitar and at his gravesite at Fort Sam Houston. I got so choked up, I could hardly sing, yet soldiered through it. I knelt down and put my hands on his gravestone crying, Apam, Apam, Father, why were you so angry? Why were you so mean? As I felt my wife's comforting arms and calm voice, as he didn't mean to. It happened to him in the war, and he taught you how not to be. And so I want to offer this to remind us of how we can be, of how we should be, as we approach Father's Day. On behalf of the National Compadres Network, on my behalf, I want to wish all of you a great Father's Day, whether that's in reflection, whether that's being in the presence of your father figure, or being in connection with that spirit that potentially is no longer here in the physical realm. I want to appreciate all of you, maestros, for being on the panel. Appreciations for all of what you shared, all of you who are listening. Want to acknowledge all of us and our father figures. With that, I say all my relations. Please stay tuned for our upcoming webinar in August, honoring grandfathers. Please be on the lookout for that announcement. Pero muchísimas gracias. Thank you, relatives. Adios.
Thank you, Ozzy. Thank you, Miguel.
Bendiciones. Thank you, everyone.
Bendiciones. And just allowing myself an opportunity to see the comments come through. Want to honor people's time and their reflections in that way. But with that, thank you, relatives. May you all have a good rest of your day and a good weekend. Much appreciation and love to all of you. Adios.
Bye-bye. Thank you.